I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is award winning author, and he is the author of the book Zen, the Art of Anal Bleaching, no other than Mr. Dave Holmes. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Dave. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
David, thanks for having me on your show. Absolutely. Uh, I'm also, my pen name is Old Harry Jesus, and I have recently published just this last June Zen and the Art of Anal Bleaching, a backdoor journey from darkness to light. And this is a novel, it's not a how to book. And the whole objective was really to find a way to use off color and inappropriate humor to weave together fiction and philosophy into really a laugh out loud type of story that also takes the reader on their own journey of self discovery. So that's a little bit of context for you there.
Congratulations, Mr. Dave. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
sharing your
you.
talents to the world. I hope we are more expecting a masterpiece like this. So how did you felt when you first read the title of your book? Is this your idea or somebody suggest of the
So my
title?
friend, a friend of mine, Stephen Ladd, and I, and Stephen's an author as well, were sitting around thinking of funny names for a book that were kind of a spoof on all the Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance, Zen and the art of archery, Zen and the art of whatnot, because those were tended to become pretty popular. We thought, well, how off the wall would it be to have Zen and the art of anal bleaching? Uh, and then Stephen thought of the tagline, "A backdoor journey from darkness to light," and so we laughed about that. And but for years, nothing got written. And then Stephen Ladd wrote his book, Spiritual Constipation, How to Get Shift Moving, which was, he had pulled together a lot of content from his blogs over the years and cleverly wove it into basically a self help type of book. And I thought, well, shoot, I better start writing Zen and the Art of Anal Bleaching, or it's never going to get published. But I decided to have it be fiction and have it be a novel instead that was humorous novel, and that's kind of how the title came into being, and the title existed before the first words of the story were even created.
So how did you interpret the connection between Zen philosophy and the act of anal bleaching?
I think Zen tends to be a really a psychology, so to speak, at its purest sense, right? And it's just becoming aware of how does our mind work, and how does our mind become attached to things, and how does that cause us suffering and all. And in the story, the protagonist, this up and comer in the high tech world, Toby Tenderhill, he makes some bad decisions, and his career implodes and his life implodes. And, he's not able to return to work in high tech just because he was kind of a jerk, and no one really wants to work with him again or recommend him. And he ends up ultimately having to take work where he can get it because he's running out of money, and he's now broke. And he ends up working in a spa, and they do nails and hair and such, but also do bleaching. And next thing he knows, he's helping out with the anal bleaching, right? Um, and initially, of course, he's horrified, right? I mean, this is what his life has become. However, through a homeless gentleman that he met who's kind of a sage, and their conversations and a number of really funny events, he starts to kind of go through his own journey of self discovery and starts to realize that he can watch his mind reacting to what's going on, but that he doesn't have to identify with that mind. It's just thoughts coming and going. And he's able to start to break that identification with being this story we tell ourselves about who we are, and more merge into the awareness that sits behind all that. So, in answer to your question, Zen, I would say, is something that can be applied, or a place where we can observe everything happening in our world, whether it's anal bleaching, or whether we're mowing the lawn, or whether we're feeding our baby. It doesn't matter so much. It's really an approach to witnessing life, I think, more than a religion.
Yes. So, what do you think the Zen, the art of anal bleaching, is asking to reconsider about self care or beauty rituals?
Well, I think that part of it does tend to illustrate the fact that we are very attached to looking young, and to our physical appearances, and then how we're perceived by others, and how our self image is based upon things like how we look and how others think we look and all that. And so, uh, yeah, in that regard, it's interesting because people can start to become aware of how much of their ego and their identity is really, really locked into things like, how do people think I look, and how kind of absurd that is to some degree, because we don't have really much control over that. We all eventually get old and funny looking in the end. So even if we happen to look good at some point in our life, it's we're not going to look good forever, right?
Yes, definitely. So, how did you challenge your perspective on societal norms around appearances?
You mean within the book, or just life in general?
Life in general, or did you connect to the book?
Well, the book connects to it as well. I mean, as the protagonist in the book, Toby, is trying to recreate and build his life back to what it once was, and he had gained a lot of weight and was not happy about how he was looking, and wasn't feeling particularly attractive and able to date and things like that. It started to become pretty clear that he had this story that he was telling himself about how, based upon what society says about, we should be thin, and we should be fit, and we should be attractive, and and our deviation from that somehow determines an aspect of our self worth or a lack of self worth, right? Um, and I think that the book in and of itself almost creates through humor a the ability for the reader to see the absurdity in that, and that these are just thoughts and stories and beliefs that society has presented, that we've accepted and never really questioned or never really thought about, but we have become those. And is it possible to let those go and not be attached to those, and use those to define our ideas of who we tell ourselves we are?
What parts of Zen and the art of anal bleaching made you laugh or feel uncomfortable, and why?
Um, that's a great question. Um, I mean, I think that there's a there's a part very near the beginning where this the Toby he's still employed in high tech, and he's on the bus, and he's in the process of checking his email on the way into work on the city bus in San Francisco, where he lives and he works. And he opens up an email, and it's from a coworker, and the guy has sent him some obscene pornographic email, and then you come to find out that these guys have a contest where they're trying to offend each other and one up each other and consistently be the one that sends the next most horrifying thing. And so instead of prepping for his interview on the bus, because he has a job interview that day for a promotion, the first thing he realizes he needs to do is quickly scour the web and find a way to respond to this guy, right? To one up him. And sure enough, he ends up finding some clip called the Flying Fister family. And of course, it's this family of trapeze artists that fly through the air and tumble around. And based upon their name, you can guess how they connect. And while they're doing their trapeze stuff, and I thought that was fairly humorous. Of course, ultimately, they end up getting fired for exactly using pornographic material on their computers at work, and that really kind of starts to spiral him into his demise. I don't want to give away too much of what happens in the book, but that I thought was fairly funny. And ironically enough, a friend of mine had read the book and said, "Hey, I don't know if you realize it or not, but that's exactly how I got let go from my job. I was doing that exact same thing with a coworker. It wasn't like we were turned on by this stuff. We were just shocking each other for the sport of it, just to make work a little bit lighter. And next thing you know, I'm out looking for a job. And I'm thinking, well, even though I made that up for the story, perhaps it happens more often than we think.
So, Mr. Dave, can you tell us behind your pen name, Old Harry Jesus?
Oh, the story behind it?
Yes.
Oh, sure. So I worked in high tech myself for years and lived in San Francisco. So that's one of the reasons I had the main character in the story start out in that world, right? Because I was familiar with that and how how people thought and how there's everyone striving to get to the top and not always being the best people in the process. Anyway, after about 16 years of that, I eventually got to the point where I realized I don't want to keep doing this. I'm not seeing my family. I'm traveling too much. When I am home, I'm not mentally present. I am, on email until 11 o'clock at night. I'm in the shower in the morning, worried about work. So I end up, resigning from the company. And then I realized, oh, geez, I need to get a personal email, right? Because I can't continue to use my work email. So I'm online on Gmail trying to find an email address, and I'm looking for Dave Holmes at Gmail, David W Holmes at Gmail, D dash Holmes. Everything's taken, and of course you know how Gmail is. They're suggesting Dave Holmes $7635 and I'm like, that's not going to work. So I start typing in different things to hopefully find something that's memorable. And I ended up typing in Old Harry Jesus at gmail.com just for humor, and it was not taken. And I thought, well, that's unique. People will remember that. I guess I'm going to go ahead and have that be my email. Then next thing you know, I've got friends that start calling me Old Harry Jesus or OHJ because they think it's kind of clever. And that was what kind of started that nickname. And so then I decided, well, I might as well just pen the book in that name just because it's kind of funny and people might see that and think it's worth a read.
I think it's unique. Old Harry
Yeah.
Jesus.
Well, that's a very kind way for you to phrase that.
So, how does the Zen and the art of anal bleaching make question your own self improvement journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it really for me because it does reflect some of my own journey along the way, and what what it really reflects is this transition from believing because we or thinking because we believe something, we think something, we have an opinion that that must be true, especially if there's an emotion involved in it. Then I'm feeling angry. This person must be a bad person. They're irritating me or whatnot. And eventually realizing that wow, these are all thought constructs that have come into my mind, whether it's through society, through family, friends, all sorts of different places. But I've created this thought construct that has become my identity of who Dave Holmes is, right? And it's nothing more than just things that I think regularly. And then there's a lot of other thoughts that are spent trying to validate that and prove that the aspects of that that I think are good are definitely good, or it's challenged because somebody doesn't believe that I'm the kind of person that I want to believe that I am. Then I get rattled, and it's all stories we tell ourselves, and then we think we're the character in the story. We forget that there's more to who we are than just this limited character, like an actor that goes on stage in costume and forgets who they ever really were, and they believe that with wholeheartedly they're nothing but that actor. I mean, that's kind of what we are as we our consciousness goes through this thing called life, right? And that being able to start to take a step back and see the mind spinning those stories and validating those stories about our who we are and our beliefs, then it becomes possible to say, okay, well, something is watching that mind think, and something is watching that mind react. So that's all happening within this awareness. And if the awareness can shift from being our individual to seeing the individual within it, that becomes a pretty profound juxtaposition for how we view reality around us, right? And that process is really the journey that the person's on in the book, but also my spiritual journey along the way. I hate to say spiritual because it's really more of not a religion based thing at all, but involved many aspects of that. So there's are some kind of parallels there, and where I pulled some of that story from.
So, how did you respond to the blending of spirituality and physical transformation in the Zen and the art of anal bleaching?
Um, that's a good question. I would say that you said with physical transformation as it relates to
Yes,
Zen
spirituality, yes.
and spirituality and physical transformation. Uh,
Yes.
in the book itself, he goes through a bit of physical transformation. He ends up starting to lose some weight and gets back into exercising and things like that. But that's not the major thrust of the book, right? I would say in general, though, physical transformation is something that can be used as a tool just for our spiritual awareness, right? Whether we're getting older and suddenly we're wrinkled and maybe we're gaining some weight and we're not as muscular as we were and our hair is falling out or in my case turning gray. And okay, this is happening and I don't have total control over that. But can I accept that as just this is part of the change that we call life? Everything's changing around us. Or do we get very attached to looking a certain way and we resist and fight when that changes, or we want to look different and we're struggling and trying to find ways to look different and we're getting Botox and we're dyeing our hair or putting Rogaine in our hair or whatever, right? Or going on all sorts of different types of diets because we're really attached to our physical appearance and how we want that to either transform positively or not transform negatively. And that's the same type of attachment whether we're attached to having a lot of money or a successful career or attached to everybody liking us and thinking that we're a good person or that we're smart or whatever our ego has invested in. And ultimately, is it okay just to let go of that and to be who we are and not have to create an idea and strive for that to be happy?
Definitely. Very well said, Mr. Dave. So, did the book push you to reevaluate the importance of external versus internal change?
Um, yes, you said does it cause me to evaluate internal versus external change? And I'm
Yes.
glad you brought that up, Daniel, because it is interesting when people start to study some of the foundational aspects of Buddhism. And the book does not talk about Buddhist terms or anything, but it is Buddhist psychology that has kind of worked into understanding what this guy's journey is like, but in a way that if you're in a contemporary Western culture, it's not going to have a bunch of words like dharma and dukkha and this and that, but anyway, with Buddhism in general, I mean, the fundamental premises is that attachment to whatever leads to suffering because things always change. And most often, people, when they think of well, what am I attached to, they're thinking external things, right? I'm attached to my new car or my promotion or finding the right spouse or having the right spouse, but not losing that right spouse or the big house. However, there's just as much attachment going on the insides of us to our beliefs. And we have beliefs about how people should be and should act. And we have beliefs about who we are and how we should be treated. And we're very attached to these when we have a reaction to when things aren't happening in a way that supports those, right? And then we react through anxiety, through depression, through bad habits or acting out or being less than maybe who we ought to be or want to be. And I think oftentimes that internal awareness of those internal attachments about our beliefs and ideas and our opinions that are so important to us, those are harder oftentimes, I think, to recognize and to let go of than some of the external stuff.
Definitely. So, how would you apply any lesson from the book?
Yeah, yeah. How I answer that question is, I think the biggest lesson is our mind is a story making machine to make sense of these experiences that just happen through our daily lives. And we want some sort of narrative that makes sense, that is continuous, that supports what we want to believe. And we will pull pieces out of these experiences that we've gone through that we like, and we'll kind of forget about other pieces. And we have a story, and then we're at a cocktail party, and someone says, "Hey, tell me about you." And then we tell our story, right? But it's just a story. And so much of that story has nothing to do with being here right now together talking to each other, right? I mean, you don't, you, who I am is, when I'm talking to you, it doesn't make a difference if I used to work in high tech or if I have two kids, right? Or if I used to like the ultra run, but now I don't because my knees bother me or whatever. I mean, I can pull nice things out there to try to hopefully have you think good things about me. But the reality is, there's just two of us right here, right now, having a conversation. And that's the only thing that's really going on. And everything else is thought based construct. So, the key lesson is realize that it's all a story and don't take it so seriously because that's all it is.
Definitely. Very well said. Mr. Very, very well said. So, what would be your advice for those aspiring writers out there?
Well, I can probably give some advice because this is my first book. So I until I published it, I was an aspiring writer recently. So uh, one of the things that somebody had told me early on, that was a friend of mine who is an author, and he had said, "Hey, look, only 2% of new authors' books usually get published on average. 2%, right? So there's a good chance it might not get published. And suppose you're fortunate enough to get your book published. 5% of those new authors that publish their books sell 300 or more copies lifetime. Because there's 2.2 million new books hit Amazon every year. Right? I mean, it's really tough to get that awareness out there. But anyway, his point was, write because you love to write and you like that creative process, and don't and write what you want to write about in the way you want to write about it, because that journey is more important than anything that's going to come from it. It's very unlikely that you're going to make millions of dollars and sell millions of copies, and maybe you do, and that's wonderful. But don't try to change everything hoping that you're going to please every potential person out there in that audience, because eventually it doesn't become the creative piece that you are enjoying creating. So write because you want to write, first of all. And then write a little bit every day. It doesn't have to be a ton. It could be a paragraph, it could be a page. You might write for a couple hours. And the reason I say that, and this isn't it's something I thought up. This was, I'd heard this, and I had found it to be very true for me. At least every day, my mind is a little bit in the world I'm creating in the story. And because it is, my subconscious is kind of working on things, and I'll have ideas when I'm laying in bed falling asleep, and that'll come to me, or ways to change something, or that I want to go back and rewrite something a different way, because I'm kind of thinking about it each day. And so then it gets easier to write each day, because in between writing you've had some different thoughts and things that you're kind of excited about, or ideas on how to improve certain things. And when you're writing, take turn off the TV, put your cell phone in the other room. It's so easy to get distracted, and then it's hard to get back into the right frame of mind, the creative frame of mind. Someone had told me recently that they'd heard an author saying, by getting rid of the phone and all the distractions and just sitting there and knowing you're going to write for an hour, eventually you become so bored there's nothing else to do, so writing starts to seem like a pretty fun thing relative to your options. So um, So, I mean, that's kind of, I think, initially, a couple very high level uh, lessons that I had learned or that helped me have a good perspective, I think, going into it.
Yes, totally agree. And stop procrastinating, people. If you have the passion to write, and share to the world, like Mr. David Holmes. So, Mr. David, what is your short-term and long-term goals in
Well, yeah,
writing?
my short-term goals, I think, relative to writing, really are really just to kind of get the word out there. This book is out there. It's a philosophical, humorous novel that people that are interested in just reading a funny story, great. And if you're interested in an introspective journey, that's available as part of the story as well. Uh, long term, if I write another book, it's going to need to be something that that comes to me that I would get really excited about, right? That I'm passionate enough about to spend a year working on and spending cumulatively hundreds of hours on, and I hope that I get the inspiration and an idea that I'm really fired up about because I would love the idea of writing another book, but I don't feel compelled to do it regardless, just because even if I don't have an idea, I'm excited about really. So I think that the future is kind of to be determined. We'll see how it unfolds, and hopefully there's another creative project in there somewhere.
Good luck for your goal, Mr. Dave. And can you please invite our listeners to support Zen, the art of anal bleaching?
Absolutely. I mean, it's available on Amazon. You need to go into the books category first to pull it up. It won't come up off the general search page, but if you go into books category, you can pull it up under the title Zen and the Art of Anal Bleaching or under Old Harry Jesus. I do have a website too, www.oldharryjesus.com, and that tells you a little bit more about the book, and it's got a couple mentions and some funny things on the website and links to Amazon to purchase it too if you'd like to. And if you do purchase it and like it, I mean, please put a good review on Amazon. That makes a big difference, much more than a lot of people realize.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Dave Holmes because if you support him, more award winning piece like this. So, Mr. Dave, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure being on your show.
Morticom people, see you soon.